here's another Life Lab school survey about who maintains the gardens. Number one, teachers again. Paid staff coordinator, parent volunteers. And we're talking about outside of the classroom, during the summers, on spring break, and these types of things. Who cares for the gardens during the summer? Parent volunteer, teachers, what? I was very shocked by this. All right, and even students, I can guarantee you none of those people are coming out to your garden in the summer. None of them come out to my garden in the summer. So know that whoever is taking care of your garden needs to do weekly checkups on the garden, especially during the summertime when you're watering and using drip. You always have to go check your drip system. It could fail and not water your plants. This summer, in fact, at one of my middle schools, the maintenance department turned off the water because they were building a brand new football field at the high school. They turned off my water at the middle school garden and didn't tell me. When I came back 3 weeks later, things were dying. And in fact, I didn't get my water back until the end of the summer, and I lost almost my whole garden. So just knowing, again, having that relationship with maintenance and making sure everybody's on board with you is important. And knowing that water irrigation fails in the summer and you really need to do a weekly checkup on that. Here's our water tower, our water container that we put all our handprints on. This is from a couple of years ago. Make sure that this is your most important thing. This is what you're going to check on. Really, this is what you're going to check on. You're going to check and make sure that your plants are getting water. Make sure that your drip irrigation is working and your timer doesn't need batteries. I change my timer batteries once a year, and it's always right when I start the summer and turn that irrigation on, I change those batteries and put new batteries in there.
Can I
yes.
So I see that lovely. Is that in scale? Like obviously that's really big, right?
Yeah, it's tall. Like I can't reach the top.
So
this is a huge. So the water comes off of the roof into there, and then there's a hose right around here that we can carry around and water in our garden. So this is a great way to do watering where you don't have water, but it's a lot of work, and this water doesn't last all summer for us. It's not enough.
It's a large footprint too, so
it's a large footprint. I know. Yeah, it's huge. Yeah, but we had a parent donate that to us, so we took it and we went with it, right? All right. So you can see with watering that you're going to want to make sure wherever your plants are that they're getting water, because these drips don't necessarily drip. If you're planting in between here, it's not necessarily going to get enough water to your plants. So just be aware of that. And so we've talked about that. Hand watering is probably one of the worst ways you could water. I know you want to spend time with your plants and water, and that's good. Do that every week anyway. But having a drip system installed is going to save you. It's going to save your garden, especially in the summer. So important. In fact, my large garden at my high school cost me $400 to put in a timer and drip system, and my smaller gardens it was more like $100. So you really don't have to spend a whole lot of money on drip, but it's so important. So make sure you have that.
What if you don't know anything about doing it?
Yeah, ask us. We'll help you. So drip is always in a circuit, and if you can remember just that little bit, it will help you. So what I do is I create a circuit of drip hose all the way around my garden that's free flowing, that can flow from its main thing. Also depends on how big your garden is too, because if you have a very large garden, you might need 2 circuit drips, okay, to separate the circuits. You also might want to water your perennials less than your annuals, for example, okay? So you might have different areas of your drip, but always think about a circuit. So if you look at this, you can see the tube is going all the way around, and then I have these, this isn't even my garden, but they have these smaller tubes going across the middle. This allows the water to go all the way around in the circuit so that it's free flowing. If you have a line that just goes out and ends, that water goes out to that end and then has to figure out how to get back. So your water pressure gets lower and lower if you have all of these ends in irrigation. So I always bring my irrigation into a circuit. And if you can just remember that, I'll make it a little bit easier for you. You'll have more success with the water pressure and the water flow. Although schools seem to have great water pressure, so it's not, hasn't really been an issue for me. And weed management. Well, what is a weed? You know, we've talked a lot about them. We don't have to talk too much, but you know, actually, I'm just going to skip over this whole thing because we've talked about weeds a lot, I think, and we can just skip right over this. We've talked a lot. Okay, and defensive weeds, there's some that are edible. This one's a purslane, and that's edible. I let the kids try it. It's lemony or, you know, tart, and it's pretty good. These weeds I kind of keep in the garden because they're edible, so I don't mind those. We talk about prevention and elimination. We've talked about all of this already because there's been a lot of questions about that. So we're going to just keep going forward. But my best advice I can give you about weeding is just to weed every time you're in the garden. Just take that 5 minutes or the 2 minutes or whatever it is, or have everybody go pick 3 weeds and come back. You know, just that, if you've got 30 kids picking up 2 weeds, that's a lot of weeds that you've just, you know, accomplished. So doing that every time you go out into the garden makes that weeding so much easier, except for Bermuda grass. So, watering and weeding with kids. These are some tips. Everyone wants to water. That's just the way it is. Everybody wants to water. We share hoses sometimes. Sometimes if I know it's going to be kind of crazy with just 1 or 2 hoses, I'll get a couple of buckets and I'll fill up the buckets of water, and then I'll have kids come over with smaller cups and just grab the water and then hand water with, you know, something like my mint or that plastic water cup behind Jan there. I'll give them, you know, smaller ones of those, and they'll just, you know, take a full thing if they can carry it. Smaller kids, you give smaller cups because they can't carry those big ones. And then you just let them take it out of the bucket and water that way. It's a good way to take time up. You want to use small watering cups. You want to pre-irrigate the weeds when you pull them. We talked about that. Limit it, make it fun, chart and count the weeds. You can do all kinds of identifying the weeds. That's really fun to do because a lot of our weeds are edible and some of them are medicinal. So it's really fun for kids to look that stuff up. And make everybody weed together. That is not a station thing to do. Weeding should not be a station within your rotation. It should be something we all do together. And then make it educational, of course. With watering, too, I just want to say that you want to always make sure you do a scratch test with kids and make sure they know what the scratch test is, because most kids will just go on to that, go on to that. They're only putting a little few sprinkles. The top might look wet, but I always say, are you sure you watered that enough? Are you sure? And they'll go, yes, I did. I'm like, okay, do the scratch test. And they just scratch the top of the surface, and almost every time it's completely dry, just right under that little top layer of soil, it's dry. So the kids learn to water correctly by doing that scratch test. So make sure that they're always doing scratch tests. Pest and disease control, we talked about a lot. Monitor your plants often. Discourage excess moisture. Healthy soil, healthy plants, right? Pest and disease resistant varieties. There are varieties of plants that are less susceptible to certain diseases. So look for those. Make sure your garden's always tidy and cleaned up, and you know, you're raking debris off of the ground, and you're not really letting dead plantage kind of lay in the soil. Especially if that plant had a disease the year before. Make sure you're pulling diseased plants out and putting in that yard waste bin that's going to go somewhere else, okay?
I love your sign.
Yeah, that's right. If something's not eating your plants, then your garden's not part of the ecosystem. That's important to know that. You're going to have bugs in your plants, in your garden. Do practice your crop rotation and your succession planting, and use non-chemical pest control. And we've talked so much about squirrels and gophers. So on page 102 and 104, I have included the Santa Clara County Unified School District Integrated Pest Management for you so that you don't have to go and look for it. This is what your school district allows and does not allow on their school grounds. You can even, I'm not sure if they put on this particular one, but at my school, they actually put the pesticides that are allowed to be used and not allowed to be used on there. But that's not something that I necessarily need to know. But they have all of this information for you ahead of time. What is and isn't allowed on the school grounds. And I didn't see anything about gopher traps, but if you have gophers at your school, you need to check with maintenance and make sure that you're using the right gopher traps if you're going to trap gophers. Okay, so just make sure you're not using there's a lot of poisons with the gophers, you know, the gopher pest management. So just make sure you're doing that okay. The other thing is that know that you cannot live trap animals on your property and move them somewhere else. You cannot do that. You are not saving the environment, okay? Don't do that. You'll get in big trouble. That's a big vector issue. So you don't want to live trap a squirrel, for example, and move it to a different park, okay? You got to figure out how to deter that squirrel from getting into your garden. Yes?
I just wanted to say this summer, I don't live at my house, like there's a, not bees but wasps, like in the ground.
Oh.
And there's specific company that will come and relocate them. They're like, because they're part of the ecosystem, but you can't have them.
Yeah, that's all fine and dandy, but that's not for you to decide. You have to ask your maintenance department to take care of that,
Right.
and they will decide what to do. That you cannot. They have very specific things they have to do for that kind of issue. We've had wasps in the ground at our schools too, and maintenance always comes and takes care of it for us.
Okay.
So they might even take care of your gophers if you are really nice to them and ask them to. They might do that too, okay?
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So one of my neighbors uses a propane flame
Yeah.
thing for weeds.
My school, for weeds.
For weeds, yeah. So yeah, he just
Yeah.
burns
You
them
can't
up.
do that at schools because maintenance freaks out about that. They don't like to see fire anywhere on the school grounds, and you have to be very careful with that. And honestly, I have one at home, and it doesn't work as well as
Yeah.
pulling it out and getting rid of it. There's a lot of danger. You have to have you have to make sure the weather's right, you know.
Okay.
And then if it's too wet, it's not going to burn, and it doesn't take care of Bermuda grass.
I was gonna say, you
can
can get
catch your
Bermuda
mulch
grass.
on fire too.
Yeah.
I've done that.
You could
Oh,
catch
yeah.
mulch on fire.
That's
Absolutely,
Dry
yes.
wood.
Okay.
That's not an option on school gardens at all. If I can't do hot composting, I can guarantee you're not going to be able to do that. I mean, on the weekend, if you just, but you're taking a risk with somebody else's property at that point.
Right, yeah. that's-
Just one thing.
Yes.
Do you, since I don't have the literature pointed out,
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean printed out, I'm sorry. Do
Okay.
you talk about gopher cages, the wire you can put around, like you're
I
talking about?
don't actually, but I can tell you they don't work for me. I've planted them in gophers, and the gophers eat everything outside of that basket, and the plant just doesn't do well. In fact, this year, I wish I could show you the picture, I had a pineapple guava tree that we had planted at the first year of our garden 6 years ago. And we planted it out in the soil. I wasn't really aware of the gopher issues that year or anything like that. But this pineapple guava has grown for 6 years, and it was a big guava plant. Well, this year, I mean, I've had gopher issues this whole time. But this year, that guava plant last week was down like this on the ground. The stump was this big.
We're working on that one.
He just decided this year to eat it. So, you know, and then I had another plant that we actually pulled up to see, and the gopher wire was around, but all the roots were nibbled right to the gopher wire, so the plant was kind of suffering. So if you have gophers, the ground's not going to work for you. It's just not going to work. Yes.
What do you do if you trap a gopher and it's not dead?
I've never had that.
It's terrible.
It's terrible. Shovel.
You have to shovel it.
You gotta check so like I said, if kids don't want to hear this, that you're doing it, they don't. But these cinch traps are really great. You put it actually into the gopher hole itself, and the gopher will come and push up against this, and it will cinch them in there and kill them. And you really can just uncinch it and leave the gopher in the hole of the thing. And again, these traps are very dangerous. This is something that you have to flag. I have to flag it at my school. I set it after school. I lock the gate. I can't use these in gardens that aren't locked. I do have a garden that isn't locked. I can't use this. I could, if I went on a Friday night and installed it, and went very early in the morning on Monday and uninstalled it. And that's what I have to do with the gardens that don't have locks. But if they have locks and I know nobody's going to be in there, I can leave this until the next time I come back. And that's usually the best way to get gophers, because you're not always going to get a gopher overnight. And sometimes you have to try a couple of times. Try a couple of their holes. The one hole may not get it, so you have to remove it and put it in another hole. Yeah. But that's a maintenance issue that you can talk to maintenance, and if your maintenance is great, they'll come and do the gophers for you. Yeah.
Wild squirrels, because our school is right next to a water canal.
Shed, a water.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like overflow water system, a big one. And I've heard a lot of neighbors say that there are these wild pack of squirrels, just come sometimes, and they've come closer to my home too.
Yeah.
But
Squirrels?
squirrels.
Yeah.
What do we do?
Yeah, I don't know, Master Gardeners, I have not been able to control squirrels. I don't know of anything.
Squirrels or
Regular brownies.
Yeah, like the gray and the.
Yeah, the gray squirrels, they do, they come and eat. I've had conversations with people about them devouring entire avocado trees and things like that. And,
You know, the problem is the ground squirrels are definitely something you can take out. They're considered a pest. When you're dealing with squirrels, the western squirrel is the
but how do
gray
you
squirrel.
take them out, Jan?
You have to use poisons. I mean,
Yeah, and you're not going to use poison in your garden
Yeah,
at
no,
school.
no, I mean.
You're not even going to leave that poison
No,
at your
actually,
school.
I do live trapping and then dispatch, but you're not gonna get that. The school will not allow me to do that, so.
Yeah, you're not supposed to do that at all. So, for me, I have a lot of pests. Not just the squirrels and the gophers are pests for me, but the birds too. So my way of dealing with that is to create another food source for them. So I create bird feeders that have bird seed. I have, nuts and things for squirrels if their squirrels are an issue. And I put it outside of the garden in another location where we are every week filling it up so that they're busy over there and not in my garden. And that's the only way I can tell you to kind of deter those types of pests with birds and things like that, is give them other food to eat,
Well,
Yeah.
Just one thing I would add. So, if you are with maintenance permission, like doing your own kind of vector control, it's important to think about the life cycle. So right now, all the ground squirrels are hibernating, right? And they're gonna have babies in the spring, so you want to kill them before they reproduce.
Yeah. And that's true for gophers as well. You want to learn and aphids and any other pest in your garden. First learn about that aphid, first learn about its life cycle, learn about the gopher's life cycle, because you'll have better chances of controlling them if you know what their life cycles are. Yeah.
Do you have the IPM site listed in your materials? Because that
I don't think I do, but I have the that's good, she'll write
yeah,
it.
because that information is
Yeah.
excellent
And then,
on all
what do you
these.
do about rats?
Since we're talking about critters. Because they
Yeah.
like to eat vegetables.
You gotta trap the rats. You gotta, the big snappers. Yeah, can't use poison. Don't use poisons, you guys. I live in the forest. I'm so against rat poison. It is killing other animals, our owls, cats eat those. Don't use the poisons at all. And really, they might be effective for the moment, but what are you doing in the long run to our environment with that?
I was just gonna say, the school will not let me use non-poison, they're insisting on poisoning everything. That's where the problem is.
Well, that may be true. Yeah, that could happen.
I mean,
So-
can you do something that encourages hawks or other
Yeah, you
sort of
can
birds?
put up a bat motel, put up an owl house,
An
put,
owl house.
yeah, encourage, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, you guys. So let's see.
And get a neighborhood cat.
Encourage beneficials. This is a great way to encourage beneficials. Have little habitats. This is the little pond I was talking about. It's got drip pouring into the pond so that when it evaporates, it fills back up. And then it has a little solar aerator for the pond, and it's just a $16 pot that I bought from Costco that just so happened to not have drainage holes in it. So encourage your beneficials. Here's a Junior Master Gardener project that we do for we call them pocket parks, and we create little habitats. This is a abalone shell that we just hung up on the fence and filled with bird seed. This is a little bee and bird drinking haven. It's just a ceramic terracotta dish with rocks put in there so that they can land, and we fill it with water every week. And then over here the kids took a broken pot, turned it upside down, and made this little habitat for lizards or snakes or we have frogs too. So that's and that's a Junior Master Gardener. And then, yes.
Sorry, I was just asking, has anybody done a garden turtle or something?
What would
Yeah, have a little turtle or tortoise that lives in the garden.
No, we're not allowed to have animals at our school.
Okay.
Not even chickens. And definitely for sure not bees. But I know schools that do have chickens, and I know of another school that has beehives. So it really just depends on what your school allows and what it doesn't. I know teachers who have had pet rabbits. So just depends on your school.
Right.
But know that you got to take care of that
Right.
pet
Oh
all
yeah,
the
yeah.
time.
And during the summer.
Yeah, because even in my little pond over here, we had a little algae bloom in the summer, and my fish died, and the kids were really upset that their fish were gone. So just know that you got to take care of whatever pets you bring in, and yeah.
Okay.
So controlling critters with kids, handpicking, be aware of feelings. That's all I have to say. Just be aware of feelings. Be very, gentle about kind of what you're doing in the garden, and do your pest control out when they're gone. If you really feel like something's that you want to save and you want to get rid of the pests, then get rid of the pests when the kids aren't there. Use row covers. These are all things, make it educational. We talked about this. Be very aware of school regulations. And harvesting with kids. Always ask before picking or eating, and be very specific about how to remove whatever they're picking from the plant. So for example, peas are and fava beans actually, are nice, peas are vines, but if you pull the pea off, it pulls the whole vine and ruins the vine. So you have to make sure that when you're harvesting with kids that you're very specifically telling them how to harvest. Use 2 hands. Make sure you're holding the plant, or use scissors or whatever it is. So just be very clear about that. Be aware of other classes. Don't take all the radishes if 3 classes, grew those radishes. Know every one of those kids wants to see that radish come to fruition and maybe even try it or eat it. So be aware that, if you're doing something for a class, that there's enough for all the students to try. And Life Lab has this rule of 3 idea. which works for them fine because they have a lot of produce and a lot of plants on there. If the plant has less than 3 on it, you can't pick from it. That's their rule. That doesn't work for me in my schools. I have to make sure that each, I'm not growing that much food, so I need to make sure that this class grew these peas. The other thing, never assign a plant to a child.
Right.
Don't do that. They're going to want to, and they want to put their names on it. And sometimes if it's an issue, I let them put their name on it, but then the next day I'll just take the tag away and go, I don't know what happened to the tag. Because what happens is that plant could die and everybody else's is living. You're creating a problem. What if that plant came to fruition and that person and everybody else's died and that person doesn't want to share their stuff? So everything in the garden is for all students, and that's very clear when we plant. We're planting this for all of us. If we get lucky, we all get to try out of the garden. Sometimes schools have individual beds for each class, so be aware that you're not picking from somebody else's bed for another class, okay? Because that's okay. Creating a bed just for one class or for each class is okay to do, but labeling plants with kids' names, unless they're going to take it home. Let them take plants home. If they're seeding sunflowers in the garden, let them do a little paper pot and put a seed in there so that they can also take that plant home. Kids love that. All right, we are done. Here's my son, my Pisces now 19, but these are the sunflowers that his class grew, and he was so proud of them. So, yeah, sunflowers are great. Master gardeners and composters, you can go to this website here, and you can see both master gardeners and composters at this website. It has on the main page all of the classes that we do for the public. So there's irrigation and pruning and all kinds of different composting things on there. So go to those classes. Most of them are free. So I just want to thank you so much for coming today and being a part of Santa Clara Master Gardeners School Garden Advisory. We really appreciate you coming today, and I hope that you go home and have some new excitement about your gardens, and that your gardens come to fruition for you and are sustainable and successful.
We toast you.
Thank you.
I toast you.